From Montgomery to Midnapore and everywhere in between, he's taking the pulse of the city. Calgary Today with Joe McFarland on 770 CHQR.
There are a few words that I expect to hear when Mike Roberts comes in for Wine Wednesday for Co-op Wine, Spirits, and Beer that coincide really well with the word wine. I expect to hear words like oaky. I expect to hear words like rich. I expect to hear words like elegant. I don't expect to hear a word like buttery. Yeah. That might have been the most sinister laugh I've heard you use so far. That's pretty fantastic. Hi, Mike.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Buttery, really?
Buttery, yeah.
Like, am I going to taste popcorn in this?
So popcorn is I find comes out quite a bit in Chardonnay. What we'll have today is these styles of Chardonnay for sure. I usually say Cracker Jacks. Remember Cracker Jacks?
Yeah.
Like a little caramel coating on it. And this is always a fun conversation because I feel like when I host wine tasting events and sometimes when I talk to people in the store, like they just figure you're blowing smoke, right? Like we describe the wine like...
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking, to be honest. I'm going, there's no way you can use the word buttery when it comes to wine. It's just not possible. No, I'm going to test this later and I will put this to the test. But
sure. So it's
how do you describe this?
Yeah, it's funny because I was doing a little bit of research and stuff for some wine pairing, food and wine pairing stuff earlier today. And so my brain, it's funny you asked me all these questions because my brain is right there. But you know, like when we say a wine tastes like cherries, the winemaker's not looking over his shoulder and chucking some cherries into the vat of wine while it's being made. These are, sometimes potentially we're just making that up and it is maybe BS and we think we smell cherries, but there's really no cherry smells or tastes in there. But it's chemical compounds and those same chemical compounds are found in some of those fruits. Right. And definitely like humans, like psychology comes into a play with wine for sure. But a lot of it is also just real true like chemistry. And it is the case with buttery Chardonnays for sure. Because Chardonnay sometimes, Chardonnay definitely... oaky Chardonnay will go through a secondary process called malolactic fermentation. Okay. So it's a conversion of malic acids into lactic acids. So a bacteria does this, much like a fermentation process happens. And when that happens, it actually creates what's called diacetyl. So this is a chemical compound, a flavor compound, if you will. And that is the same chemical compound that we find in butter. So it's not that...
Diacetyl, I would assume, is because they like dye is what, 8?
You're asking the wrong guy.
Oh, I'm making the wine guy talk math. I'm sorry. Right? Anyways, continue.
But so it actually creates diacetyl, which is a compound we find in butter. So it's not nonsense that we think it reminds us of butter. It's because that same chemical compound is found in there. And it's really neat now with technology and stuff. We are isolating more and more and more of these flavor compound like families and in foods and in wood and plant life and blah, blah, blah. And it's really neat now because we can start to kind of play into that world. And I was working on a food and wine pairing exercise today and I did dip into that world of a family of compounds called sodalones, and they're highlighted when wine is in an oxidative environment. So that's barrel fermented and stuff. So this wine would definitely be high in some of those flavor profiles. And you find those savory, caramelly, it's like savory and sweet all together in things like soy sauce and dried mushrooms and different things like that. So it's pretty cool. There's a whole world out there.
So other words that I would not normally bring forward with wine. Can you think of a couple off the top of your head?
Oh man,
descriptors, adjectives.
Wine is interesting because when I talk about it, sometimes if you mention specific fruits or flavors, like not everybody's connected to that. So I often try to describe wine in its texture, because I feel like most people can understand that. We're used to feeling, and we're more present in that part of our environment. And so I'm sure sometimes I describe the texture of wines in some pretty quirky ways. But one, I think...
You quirky?
Yeah,
no,
never. All wine people, I do believe, are in that category. But I talk about some wines being fleshy, and I think that might be a hard one for people to understand. Yeah, you should see the face that he just made at me right now.
You want to check out on Facebook.
There you go.
What does fleshy mean?
Yeah, and so I think of like the inside of the grape, right? The skin is the tartness and the sort of like the bitterness and the astringency, and the inside is that fleshy character. And some wines feel tighter and more like they have edges, and some wines feel more fleshy and more kind of plush. And so it's just words like that. I think that maybe throws people off, but
nothing like nachos or anything like that.
I have never described wine as nachos, no, but I'm sure
you need to fix that at some. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. When it comes, you guys, let's change topics for a second here. And we were talking off air about a little bit of BC coming in through your guys' shops. What's going on here?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, obviously, the last couple of years, there's been the whole pipeline issue and everything like that. And the Alberta government put the ban on and stuff, which obviously didn't last very long. And so we're celebrating March every year. We do as BC VQA month, and kind of highlight BC producers. And for us in the wine world, that's local producers, and Co-op obviously is big time into supporting local and Canadian and all that kind of stuff. So it's funny because it went quiet on that front, and people kind of got over it. And it does feel a little bit like people are a little back on the train, and that probably has to do with a lot of what's on TV and on the news now. And, politics seems to have kind of crept back into our lives, and it's an election cycle and all that business. But I will say that the Okanagan Valley is growing and learning and starting to find itself in the wine world. I've talked to winery owners and the farmers, like personally, and these guys all drive, Dodge 3500 diesels and live in the country and drive tractors. They're farmers, right? So I can assure you they're not anti-Alberta oil and gas industry and stuff like that, because they need us. They need our market. They need our resources, and it's unfortunate. But we're still celebrating their wines and their diversity, and we've got lots of events coming up at our tasting centers throughout the month of March to celebrate that and be partners. So
sounds fantastic. I'm going to give this buttery wine a test. Yeah. So why don't you give us a little bit of a background on the wine, where it's from? I think you said California. Give us a little bit of a background on this winery.
This is Bogle is the name of the winery, and that's the family, the Bogle family, 6th generation, Clarksburg, California. So that's kind of closer to Sacramento, so a little bit. So that would be east of San Francisco rather than north towards Sonoma. So it's a little hotter. The grapes get nice and ripe. It's called the Phantom, and it's a Chardonnay. So it's really ripe. So you don't think of like apples and limes. You think more into this, tropical fruit, lots of grilled pineapple. It does go into oak barrels, so you get that caramel, that applejack that I like to talk about, or popcorn, as some people might pick up. And oftentimes these wines, I think of creamed corn is the one that kind of comes out there.
I can see that, yeah.
It's a rich, soft white wine, right? Like it's not tight. It doesn't, make your mouth really water. It's a luscious white wine style, really rich. And when it's so cold out today, a little guava and tropical fruits is great in your glass. So
yeah, that's definitely a rich one. And there's a little bit of buttery. I never thought I'd ever say that in a million years.
Diacetyl.
There you go. I'll have to look that up. When I was thinking I was thinking dice, 6 sides, not 8. I don't know what planet I was from. Anyways, Mike Roberts from Co-op Wine, Spirits and Beer. Wine Wednesday is always a pleasure, my friend.
Hey, thank you. And this is on sale right now in our stores till the end of tonight. So it's $11 off. So it's great savings.
Go get it now.